right. Hey, everybody. My name is David Carter. I'm the Director of Education for Charleston Jazz. It's great to be here today with one of our awesome teachers, a great friend of mine, Mr. Adam Prack. Welcome, Adam. Thanks for joining us today.
Hello. Good to see you, David.
Hey, good to see you as well. Um, I see that you have this really cool green curtain. I'm just gonna throw that out there real quick.
Oh,
What's the green curtain for? Can you enlighten us?
well, I use it for a couple different things. If it's a lesson and I had a little extra time before, I'll bring that up here and put it behind me so I can load in fancier backgrounds and do just fun overlays, try and make things fun for the students. So I'll end up on like different Star Wars sets and things like that. Um, and then I'll use it with the kids to make some like visual effects videos, like my own kids, just for fun. If you have to bring a kid in as a green screen element on a video, as you do, um, sometimes I end up doing like live streams on Twitch and Mixer and stuff like that with doing music. So I'll use a green screen behind me for different things. So there's not all this blocky stuff around. It's just sitting there for now. But
Hmm. So
use it for a bunch of stuff.
you, I'm guessing you're into a lot of technology stuff and music and mixing and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I like all that stuff. It's readily available. You can do amazing things with it, and I don't know. I like doing extra things and not doing the bare minimum.
I hear that.
I like it. I like things more fun for everybody.
No, for sure. And I think that's for the folks tuning in today. We're going to talk a little bit about music technology. We're going to talk about Adam's experiences as a composer and how he uses different digital audio workstations and other things of the such. So, uh, can you tell us a little bit about your musical background? Uh, did you do chorus? Did you do band? Were you always into technology? Just tell us how you got here.
Yeah, I was a band kid. I did music stuff before that. I would play, harmonica and stuff and mess around with the piano at our house. But sixth grade, like so many other people, I started on an instrument. Actually kind of wanted to do drums, but my family said no. So I did trumpet. Um, so I guess that means I've played trumpet for like 20 years now. Um, but I played in band. I always did pretty well with it. And then in high school, a friend of mine was writing techno on Fruity Loops before it was called FL Studio. Um, so he started teaching me that, and I learned how to use it. I learned how to use an old version of Sibelius. Um, I briefly touched Finale and hated it then, and have every time I've touched it since then. Um, but I started learning how to write techno back in it's probably freshman year of high school. And as I started writing, I wanted to do more complex things. I wanted, meter changes and stuff. And so I started branching into different styles of music, and I'd bring in more real instruments and ended up just writing, classical music after a while. And I had a supportive band director. He would let me write stuff for the group, and then we would do a reading session and play it. So I wrote, a full band piece, and I got to hear it played live by my high school band when I was in high school, which was a great experience. We were also doing solo ensemble one year, and I didn't really like most of the ensemble music that they gave us to choose from. So I just raised my hand like, "Hey, who wants to play something different than all this stuff?" And everybody raised their hand, joined my group, and I wrote a piece for that group. And we took it to solo ensemble, and got superiors or whatever the thing is for it. And when it was over, one of the judges he pulled me to the side. He said, "Hey, did you write this, or did one of you guys write that?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I wrote that." "Hey, can you hang after for a minute?" Turns out he was an arranger, and he had some tips, some helpful things for it. And then we got back on the bus. Apparently, you could take a theory test for solo ensemble and get a medal for it. I didn't know that at the time, but I got a theory medal. I guess I figured if you could write a piece, you're all right.
Yeah.
So I ended up loving music composition and went to University of South Carolina to study music composition. Um, but the the intent in my back pocket was always that I love video game music and that type of writing, you know, more dramatic, catchy, really cool stuff. And it's every bit as sophisticated as every other genre. It just gets to the point a lot faster, I think. So I've always liked that type of thing. And I really like doing a mix of doing things for media and doing stuff for live musicians, for ensembles, for playing. it's just a fun mixture, and I really like being able to mix electronics with with live players, and I like doing virtual versions of them and just producing all of it at home. And I like playing all the different instruments and just trying to make everything that I can, but make all of it as professional as possible.
Hmm.
I don't want anybody to know that it came from one guy's room. I want them to think that it came from a big, huge production.
Well, that's an interesting point. I think that's great. You're talking about the incorporation of electronics and technology. Um, Talk to me about some of the electronics and things that you're using technology wise to help assist you.
Yeah, well, I can show you a little bit of it. So a lot of people are familiar with notation softwares like Finale and Sibelius, and there are plugins that you can use like Note Performer that make it sound better and things like that. But they're not really for producing a finished audio product. They're for engraving, making actual paper copy of stuff. So for actually producing audio, use what's called a digital audio workstation, which I'm sure you're well familiar with. Um, there's a whole ton of them out there. People use Ableton and Logic and Sonar and Cubase and Reaper and Pro Tools, depending on the application. All kinds of, just different stuff. More recently, I've switched everything over to Reaper as my choice. It works so well with my personal workflow. It gives me so many options and so much freedom. Um, I can just really do like everything with it. So like when I'm teaching my students, I use these other layouts for stuff. So like I would use something like this for doing music production. Here's a different piece that I wrote pretty recently. You guys posted it on the Charleston Jazz Academy social media stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I have all the different tracks laid out here. Go through writing MIDI for everything. And then I also go through and record audio versions of everything, or everything that I can. Can't do all of it. Don't have a string orchestra in my back pocket. Um, so we have live trumpet, horn, clarinet, and trombone in this particular one. Trombone is split in a couple of them. And then a string orchestra, it's all done with MIDI. So I'll take, piano music and write all of it out. I'll have the different velocities for the keys. I do subtle timing variations to make it sound a little more human, things like that. Um, and then if I'm doing more expressive instruments, I'll also have like multiple MIDI tracks going along with it. Like this is for flute. I would have their notes, but I also use different expressions to make them sound, a little more human. They can play a little more like you expect them to. Adding little things like slurs between different notes on violin if they're doing portamento or if they're just actually slurring, moving their fingers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put all this together and mix it into finished audio product. It's a lot of fun.
I hear that. Do you ever use written notation software like Sibelius or Finale with
Yeah,
this?
I use it all the time. I use both. So that whole piece that I just showed you um, also exists entirely on paper. Let me switch this to. So here's the whole score for that.
Mm-hmm.
This particular one I wrote out, the entire piece first, in written notation. So the entire score was done first, and then later I made the audio version. I don't always do it that order. I go back and forth depending on it. Um, if I'm doing something that's maybe more ethereal or like horror music or sometimes some really action oriented music, I'll write that stuff in Reaper first, make the audio version, and then I'll go back and copy everything cool that I did down onto paper
Mm-hmm.
to represent it later.
Wow.
Um, but even though I don't really intend anybody to use the score, I mean, they can, I guess. It was mostly for me. I still try to make sure that it's produced, to high quality. It looks really good. Like I have, bowings for strings and things like that, proper articulations and dynamics. I have the large time signatures at the top of the page to make it easier for a conductor. Because anytime that you're writing music, you should always try to make it easier for whoever has to deal with your stuff. Whoever has to deal with your work, it needs to be easy for them.
That actually leads into my next question is, uh, do you have any tips, tricks, or other advice for maybe younger musicians that have to do with something with composition or technology? Any advice?
Uh, yeah, I can do a couple tips from different, I guess, experience levels for them. Um, if you're starting out, don't be afraid to learn some music theory. Um, I don't necessarily think you need to go through the entirety of a curriculum based on any of the theory books and things like that. Honestly, YouTube is fine. You can get a lot of really
Mhm.
great basic stuff with really good examples really quickly. Um, but learn it so that you can understand how to communicate your ideas better, and then also learn because it'll give you different ideas yourself, because your ideas are only generated in your mind based on the knowledge that you have. So if you increase that, then you have increased the number of tools in your pouch. So like every class that I took in college, um, I mean, I had good grades, but I really didn't care how I did in them. That wasn't the point for me. I didn't even care about getting a college degree all that much. I cared about learning different techniques, and I treated every single class as a way to learn a new technique.
Mhm.
So even music history was so that I can write in those styles if I need to for something. So treat everything like it's a tool that you can grow and generate more ideas from. And then if they're a little bit further along, if they're, a little more experienced and they started writing, um, pay a lot of attention to how things look and how things are set up so that it's really easy for your instruments. You should make it so that your piece is sight readable for any relatively good musician. Um, Not necessarily that they can play all of it perfectly, but that they never have to ask you a question. If they need to waste rehearsal time asking you a question, you messed up. Your score should tell everything. So like in this, it's in 6/8, so I have my groupings and stuff based on that. But if I switch over to 4/4, well, I'm not putting dotted quarter notes in
Mhm.
different places because honestly, that's the lazy way and it's really ineffective. I'm
Mhm.
going to make sure that the beaming discloses to the player what it should sound like, how their pulse should be. So like a common rhythm of eighth quarter eighth right here. Um, Break this up, keep your beams consistent, make sure that they actually line up with whatever you're trying to do, because then the player can see here's beat one, here's beat two, here's beat three.
Mhm.
Make everything really, really clear to everybody at all times. Go the extra mile, put in text notes if you have to.
Mhm.
Um, do anything that you can to make it clear for everybody because you'll ultimately get a better product.
This is
And I
great.
think the and the tip for anybody is if you ever have an instrument left over in a score, you're making a piece and you have one more instrument and you don't know what to do with them. Uh, Dick Goodwin gave me this advice. He said, "Give them the melody, because your piece will never be worse for having a little bit more melody." And that third clarinet player now loves you.
There we go. There we go. I think that's great advice. That's sound advice, for the developing composer and for the ones just beginning. So thanks for that, Mr.
Yeah.
Prack. Uh, I guess. Well, what's the piece about? Talk to me about the piece. Before I ask my last question, what's this piece about? Childhood.
Oh yeah, this piece. I was writing it for a type of competition on just a Discord channel that was just for fun. But the idea was to write something based on literature, like inspired by, but not do something like Star Wars where we already know the theme. That's an arrangement. They wanted an original composition based on something from literature.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, y- there's lots of things that I like, but I don't know what I would do. It's like, I mean, Ender's Game is probably my favorite book, but and they already made an okay movie out of it. Wasn't really sure. And then my wife Megan came walking in. She said, "Why don't you do Calvin and Hobbes?" What? Oh my gosh, I never thought about that. So like, I usually don't even write all that upbeat of music most of the time. But it got me thinking, oh my gosh, I all those different memories of the different things that, Calvin and Hobbes in the comic would go through. Well, a lot of those matched my own childhood. And when
Mm-hmm.
I was writing this, I actually found out that the author lived like an hour away from where I grew up. So there was a reason that the world of Calvin and Hobbes looked so familiar, because my it was where I lived in Ohio. Um, but I wanted to write kind of what it looked like to me, or what it looks like to me to look back on those memories as a child, but from the perspective of an adult. So with nostalgia. So like the first, tempo marking says nostalgic, so that you understand what I'm going for with it. So, there's a little bit more emotional oomph in some of the parts. There's a little bit more of things kind of tapering off, and kind of fading into other things a little bit. But I wanted to bring about like the different fun things and the different imaginative times when you're a kid, both the times when you're screwing with the teacher and trying to give them a hard time, but then when you're having just a cool, awesome, imaginative thing with aliens, and you're a hero and you're beating all of them. um and the theme is used consistently all throughout, but it's treated as a different rhythmic entity every time. The entire theme is based off of the childhood taunt, neener neener neener,
Mm-hmm.
with one note in the beginning, so it's displaced rhythmically backwards, so nobody can recognize it. Um, and it keeps going, and eventually it all builds up to some kind of emotional stuff, but it fades out, and it ends on kind of a Lydian ethereal vibe as things kind of fade out and smooth out, because all that cool stuff from childhood, as much as you want to think back to it, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
That's all stuff in the past, and it's gone. It goes away. Um, so it was kind of an emotionally striking thing to me to even think about that. Um, so I really liked writing a piece that depicted those things. So it's probably a little more programmatic than I would normally do anymore, but it worked for this.
This is the piece is beautiful, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
can besides accessing it through our social media pages, is there somewhere else that you maybe have put this that we can
Oh, yeah.
access it?
Yeah, you can always get to it on my YouTube channel, or if you're already friends with me, I post it on Facebook. Um, but just search for Adam Prack on YouTube. I have a channel where I have a bunch of different music that I've posted throughout the years. I'm not super crazy active on it all the time, but I post some stuff on there.
Is it just Adam Prack, or is it Adam Prack Music, or should we look up anything specific besides that?
Just search for Adam Prack.
There we
I'm the
go.
only one. No,
Well,
technically I'm not, but Adam Prack. Let's see, the first all of the results are me, and the first thing that comes up. Um, but you can just do youtube.com/Adam Prack is my channel name.
cool, cool, cool. Everybody, did y'all hear that? Check it out.
Yeah,
Check
you
him out
should
on
go
YouTube.
listen to it.
Now he has
You
some
can see some other stuff.
awesome stuff.
You can see a live performance of a piece from a couple years ago, um, that Todd Smith premiered with his band at Stratford. There's demo reel stuff in there. There's a lot of old pieces. There's a lot of neat stuff in there.
Check it out. Everybody check it out. uh on just a getting to know you sort of thing. The community, tell the community, if you could travel anywhere in the world today, where would you go?
It's probably not as amazing as everybody else. I mean, I guess I have a deep seated love for a lot of Japan, like Kyoto and Tokyo and things like that. But realistically, I just like going and visiting like mountains and caves and stuff. That stuff's so cool. I've lived by the beach for 20 years, so the beach is boring now. Um, so like places with like hills and elevation and all that stuff, it's just so cool to me now. So like my wife and I's last trip, we just went to the mountains in Tennessee and had a great time going on trails and stuff. So not some super amazing, oh wow, that would be the best Instagram post ever location. but I just like mountains and streams and simple stuff like that.
Simple stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, Mr. Prack. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, I learned a lot today. I hope the folks who tuned in today have learned a little something. Can people reach out to you besides YouTube? Is there like a way that people have questions about compositions or they want to learn more about theory and stuff? Would you be a guidance? Like
Yeah.
how can they reach out to you?
So I always keep my email public for everybody. Um, it I don't care who it is. I'll answer stuff eventually. I'm slow, but it's just my name, adamprack@gmail.com. You can always reach me on something like uh, Twitter. It's at Adam_creations. Um, use my LLC name for stuff like that. I'm pretty readily available. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, everywhere. Just searching for either Adam Prack or Adam Creations. They all show up. Um, I'm pretty readily available to answer stuff and help out people. And every now and again, I get somebody who asks me stuff, and I don't know. I believe in overdoing things a little bit, so I will go through detail and show everything that I can. Um, it's how I try to teach my lessons. It's how I try to do everything. The bare minimum isn't enough.
And for what it's worth, we love you so much at the Academy. And
thanks.
Because you overdo it in a good way, you want to make sure that we're prepared. Students are prepared. And we love you for that. So thanks for being part of the team. And